Hi everyone, we'll get underway. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Peter Cleary, I'm the brand manager for Australian Monitor. And first of all, I'd like to thank Ewan Brown, the General Manager of Australian Monitor, and Jesse Kovac, the Engineering Manager, for joining us today to provide an introduction to the Australian Monitor ISP series of power amplifiers and showing you via a live demonstration the capabilities and flexibility of the Alma control software. Ewan and Jesse are going to be doing the heavy lifting today, and I will be monitoring the Q&A, which brings me to some basic housekeeping. First of all, if you have any questions at all during the presentation, please use the Q&A button on your screens and we'll get them answered. This is not going to be pages and pages of PowerPoint, but a virtual hands-on with the amplifiers and software. So your feedback during it is encouraged. The agenda today is fairly straightforward. We'll be giving you an overview of the product and introduction to the basic feature set, followed by a live demonstration of the Alma control software, which will show you the capabilities of the range. We're going to show you the use of the Dante card and how easy it is to send and receive to and from the ISP amplifiers over a Dante network. And finally, an overview of the third-party controls. Okay, I'll now pass over to Ewan and Jesse to take it from here. All yours, guys.
Thank you very much, Peter. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining. My name's Ewan Brown. I'm the General Manager for Australian Monitor, and this is my colleague, Jesse Kovac.
Hey, guys.
So Jesse is the Engineering Manager for Australian Monitor. So if we dive straight into the agenda for today, as Peter has said, I'll just go into a bit more detail here that we will be going over the Australian Monitor power amplifier range and where the ISP series sits within our full range of power amplifiers. We will then be going through an overview of the ISP features, and then Jesse will take over it and we'll do a deep dive of the Alma control software. Alma is the name for our control software, both in terms of web interface and control of the product, right the way through to third-party control. So we'll be talking a lot more about this Alma control software later. We will then proceed to a live demonstration that involves an ISP series of power amplifiers, so 2 amplifiers with Dante modules inside the units, and we will go through the setup of those systems and stream some audio just so that you can see exactly how that is accomplished. And finally, we will be doing an overview of the third-party control and the Alma protocol. So that's basically the format of how you can send and control from third-party applications to the ISP power amplifiers. So the ISP power amplifiers, there are 4 models within the range. There is an IS2120, an IS2250, an IS4120, and an IS4250. Pretty self-explanatory, hopefully, in the model naming convention, the 2 channels of 120, 2 channels of 250, 4 of 120, and 4 of 250. You'll see the 2 channel versions come in a 1 RU chassis size, and the 4 channels are 2 RU. In addition to the core power amplifiers, there are 2 expansion modules that are available. This is a DM4X4, which is the Dante expansion module that allows you to have 4 Dante input streams and 4 output streams to the ISP amplifiers. There's also an analog 4 card, which provides an additional 4 analog inputs above the existing inputs that exist in the product. So these are deliberately expansion modules to keep the product as cheap as possible if you don't need these features, but giving you the flexibility if you do need them. So again, we'll go into detail later on how those modules are used, how they are installed and configured. So the ISP amplifiers and how that sits into our range. Over the last couple of years, we've been releasing and refreshing the whole series of power amplifiers from Australian Monitor. The ES series is our cost-effective basic range. So this is your only power amplifiers, analog in, straight to the power amplifier output, These come in 4 ohm or 100 volt outputs on the ES series, and there are a series of configurations from a single channel to multi-channel to a 4x80. So that's our basic range and very cost effective. Moving into the HS series, this is our mid-range, and this was released a couple of years ago. This has a mini DSP in the product and USB and RS-232 control. So the difference from the ES series, adding that mini DSP, which allows you to do routing of audio, there are compressors and limiters in the product, and the ability to also communicate and control the product remotely through that RS-232 link. And then to what we're here today to discuss is the IS series. So that is our premium flagship offer, and it has a full DSP in the product. So that would be the differentiation from the HS series. We will show you what that really means in terms of a full DSP, parametric EQs, a whole series of additional features in that DSP chain within the product. It also has an Alma web application, and what that means is the control software is running within the product. There is no application that you need to download. So I didn't say before, sorry, on the HS series, it is a PC control application. So that's traditional download, install onto your computer, and it allows you to take control. With the IS series, it has a web server inside the product. So you log in through a web browser, your Chrome, Firefox web browser as examples, and you can directly communicate with the device. There's no software to install. That also gives you the power to be able to connect to the product on multiple devices, and I'll speak about that a bit later. So that is our range of products. And to go into the detail of the ISP series. So I've already talked about the configurations that we have in terms of 2-channel, 4-channel. So in terms of the DSP and what we mean by a full DSP, it has the ability to perform volume control on all of the inputs and all of the outputs. So that allows you to then configure the mixer within the product. So you can have different levels of input from the Dante, from if you have that installed, or from the analog inputs, and you can mix those all together to an output. So that is why we're calling a matrix mixer in the product, as opposed to a selector or a crosspoint switch. You can mix the audio channels together if you wish. Again, every configuration is different, but it has that flexibility in order to mix any of the inputs together to an output. There's a high and low pass filter and an all pass filter. There are 12 bands of parametric EQ per output, and Jesse will be showing you that in much greater detail in the control software, how that works and all of the features that are available in that. Although we've said parametric EQ here, you can set it to a whole number of other features. So examples are things like shelves, notch filters, etc. So there is more to that, and as I say, Jesse will show you that. There is a compressor or limiter, so you basically pick which function you want on the output channel, and you can fully configure how that compressor or limiter operates. And there is a delay of up to 75 meters per amplifier output. So that's equivalent to 220 milliseconds of delay that you can put on an output. There is Ethernet control. So on the back of the product, there is an Ethernet port, and that allows you to gain access in order to configure through the control software or through third party. Obviously, the capability to then remotely control the product is another huge bonus for this product. There are 4 general purpose inputs and outputs, and again, they are under software control. So they allow you to monitor the system, to trigger mutes, to trigger presets, and a whole bunch of other features, and that can be configured within the software. There is an automatic audio failover that allows you to monitor any of the input channels that are going to the power amplifier output, and you can then, if the signal is lost, automatically transfer over to another channel, just to make sure that you have continuous audio. There is the ability to control the product over third-party applications using our protocol, and they can use TCP or UDP in order to control those for full flexibility of control applications that they may need each protocol. There is also low power standby in this product. So something that you may not have come across before, ERP, that is basically the European directive on low power for products. So it's the equivalent of Energy Star, that is a US-based standard. ERP is the European equivalent of that. So when the product is put into standby, either through control software or through signal sensing, it will drop to a state below 2 watts. So the obvious benefits of that for larger installs that are requiring these energy efficiencies. And as I discussed before, the capability of supporting the expansion modules. So that is the ISP in a nutshell. Just go into a bit more detail on the Dante expansion module. So these are cards that are sold separately. They are not part of the core ISP. They must be purchased separately. And they provide the flexibility to have 4 input channels, so receive channels into the amplifier. This is almost certainly how most of the installs will work, that you will install one of these cards in order to receive a Dante channel coming in. However, the card also has the flexibility of transmitting audio out of the system. So we'll go into this in greater detail later, but what this means is that you can do DSP inside the amplifier, mix channels together, and then send that mixed DSP audio back out onto the Dante network, which can be consumed by another Dante receiver. That could be another ISP power amplifier, and you can daisy chain them in that way, or it could be to any other system that is compatible with Dante. The analog 4 expansion module, again, is just there to give the flexibility to, if you require more than the 4 inputs, so there are 2 inputs on a 2-channel version and 4 inputs on the 4-channel version. If you add in the analog 4 expansion module, that would then give you 6 inputs for the 2-channel version and 8 inputs for the 4-channel amplifiers. So it's just giving you the greater flexibility that you can add more inputs into the power amplifier, change the way the DSP is mixing all of those audio channels together and sending them out the amplifier. So you can use this in innovative ways that you can remove the requirement for some front-end mixing, for example, by using these types of cards, that the mixing is actually accomplished within the amplifier. Within the software, which Jesse will go into, there are some additional settings that can be made in order to switch some attenuation and give flexibility in what input level you're putting into the analog card. So to go to the rear panel of the ISP, there is the 4-channel version, the 2RU, and the 2-channel version, the 1RU. The 4 channels of amplifier output, they each have a 4 ohm output, a 70 volt output, or a 100 volt output. All of the channels independently can be operated in different modes. So for example, channel 4 here, that could be operated in a 4 ohm configuration, while channel 3, 2, and 1 could be operating in the 100 volt configuration. So you can just pick whichever mode that you want per channel. There's a question from Peter here.
Yeah, Phil Schul has asked, is the expansion module mic line or line only?
So the expansion module is, for this product, line in only. The analog 4 card will be used with future products that we're releasing that will support the mic capability of that channel. But for the ISP power amplifiers, they are all line input levels. Thanks for that question, Phil. So that is the power amplifier outputs. If I hopefully can zoom in here, sorry, can I zoom in? Yeah. So there is 4 GPIO ports on this product. So GPIO is general purpose input output. That gives you the capability in the software to set these to a whole number of different modes. And just so we don't constantly repeat things, I'll wait until Jesse goes through the Alma control software to really explain what that means. But this is the port that will allow you to connect trigger inputs, to connect VCA controls in order to do remote volume control, etc. So if you just remember that there is a Euroblock connector on the back here that allows you to do the triggering for the GPIO. There is a dedicated standby input, and closing the standby to the ground pin will then pull the product into standby. So again, that's a dedicated input. There is the Ethernet port. That is 100 based Ethernet on this. For this type of product, there's no requirement for a gigabit, but that is a full, what's the term for it?
100 base.
It's 100 base, but it allows auto DMX. So you can use crossover cables, standard cables, any cabling will work with this on an Ethernet. There is the expansion slot. So that is where you put the analog 4 or the Dante module. And again, we will show you that in greater detail later, how you install the expansion boards. There is the analog audio inputs. So for each channel, there is a Euroblock balanced audio input. And finally, there is a reset button. We'll speak about this later, but the reset button actually does a few more advanced features of being able to set the product into resetting its IP address, the ability to reset account details, to obviously completely reset the product. But that reset button allows for a lot of flexibility and some typical use cases, that problems of you come into an install in a year's time that someone else has actually done that install and not documented it. You don't have any idea of what the IP address of the amplifier is. We'll go through how that reset button can be used in order to access the product if you don't have access previously. And it's exactly the same on the 2-channel version, obviously just with the restriction of 2 channels, but it does still have 4 GPIO inputs. So that is the rear panel of the product. And now we're going to move into the Alma control software. So as I said before, Alma is our name for how you control our ISP power amplifiers. And what Alma allows you to do is to, first of all, connect to the amplifier. So you can connect from any device or operating system. So as I previously mentioned, the ISPs work with a web-based interface. So you can use a mobile phone, a tablet, a PC, any of these devices that have a web browser. You can use them to access the Alma control software. And again, there is no software to install, so it can work with any operating system. You just have to have a compatible web browser, which is basically any one that exists at the moment: Chrome, Firefox, Safari, etc. Once you've connected to the unit, it allows you to do the configuration of the DSP, the full audio setup, and also how you are going to control the ISP, be it from third-party control or through the GPIO. All of those controls are in the Alma software as well. So I'll now pass over to Jesse, who's going to go through the Alma control software, how you connect to it, and how you operate it. So thank you, and I'll come back at the end and speak later. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ewan. So out of the box, you simply just connect your ISP Ethernet to any DHCP enabled router. And from that point on, it's a very simple process. What I would do is I'd launch my web browser, and every product has a unique 6-digit number on the front panel of the amplifier. So if you have multiple units, you can uniquely connect to each amplifier. The one I've got in front of me happens to have this unique number. And if I type that in the search engine, it comes up to this. And the first page I'm presented with is the login page. So,
sorry, just if I could interrupt what Jesse was saying there with the digits here, that is the last 6 digits of the MAC address on the product. So on the back of the ISP power amplifiers, there is a serial number, but there's also a MAC number. So that's how you would identify that number if you didn't know. You look at the MAC address on the back and it's the last 6 digits.
thanks, Ewan.
Okay, sorry, in the silence, we've just got our first demonstration problem. So
I'll just let it go.
just go to the other one.
Yeah, try the other one. This is one we bagged earlier. Okay.
Oh, I think we've lost
The
connection.
The connection. Okay.
So what we're doing is we're operating on the Ethernet in order to do our Zoom call, and we are communicating over the Wi-Fi in order to speak to a router that is connected to the products. So hopefully we'll be able to fix this. We appear to have lost the Wi-Fi connection to the products. Okay, we'll give that one more go.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so our Wi-Fi is back up. Apologies for that.
Thank you, technical support. Okay, so first page is the login, out of the box, admin. Okay, the first page you're presented with is basically a snapshot of the outputs of the amplifier. So in this setup, I'm connected to the 250p. So we can see that there's 2 outputs, amplifier output 1 and amplifier output 2. 0 dB by default. Got the ability to mute the mixer setup, which I'll discuss in a second. You've also got the standby mode. You've got the preset, which I'll further go into. We'll just bring it out of standby, just in preparation for this demo. So you can see that the status has changed to OK. Status also reports if the amplifier is in an over temperature state, an overload state, or normal operation, which is OK. So the next tab is the audio tab. And basically that gives you a full snapshot of your inputs on your left. So the 7 inputs in this 2-channel, which are the 2 analog line ins, a test channel, which has pink noise sign for testing, and the 4 Dante inputs. So this product is fitted with an expansion card, as you can see. So there's 4 Dante inputs and 4 Dante outputs on the right. Also on the right, we have the 2 amplifier outputs, 1 and 2. And then we have basically the signal processing chain. If the box is gray, it means it's a bypass. If it's green, that means it's going through some features, which I will show you that we will be enabling. So the first, the first block for each of the line signals is the ability to attenuate by 15 dB. That's on by default. So basically, whatever signal is coming in is squashed by -15 dB. That's kind of as a safety thing. If you do need that extra headroom or signal strength, you would unclick that to bring it up by 15 dB. So that's just a simple toggle switch. And the next block we have is the mixer setup, and this is where it gets interesting. So I'll go into the first mixer setup block, and you can see this is output centric on the left. So for each of the 6 outputs, we have a radio toggle to see what inputs are being mixed to all of the 8 outputs. Now, the great thing about this product, the thing that I like, is that all the inputs are independent. The input mix matrix is independent for each different output. So for example, I can come along here and change the volume of analog input 1. And then when I go to analog output 2, I have a totally different setting, which is great. So if I get the perfect mix for output 1, I'm not going to change it by moving to different channels. So each output has its unique mix matrix and mute and invert state handling, which is great. So I'm going to come back to this a bit more in a further example, but that's pretty much it.
One thing I'd just like to highlight here is that there is also an additional input option here. So these would be your 2 analog inputs, but there is an internal input within the product. So it's a pink noise or sine wave generator. So when you're commissioning the products, you can actually bring in this pink noise generator. You could mute or leave those other ones open, but you can then bring up the pink noise, and that would send pink noise out of your system. So that is another option in order to configure during your install.
Okay, the next dynamic block that I'll go over is the crossover and EQ. Okay, so the first screen the screen that we're presented with is a snapshot of the dynamics for the ISP system. Now, it's composed of 3 filters and a 12-band parametric EQ. So the 3 filters are a high, all, and low. And the 12 bands of parametric EQ are these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 parametric EQs. Now, each of these parametric EQs can be set to different functions. So you can have a high shelf, a low shelf EQ, which is your standard EQ, with the ability to cut and boost frequencies around a cue point, the notch, the high pass, and the low pass. So you could make these all EQs if you wish, but we've just sprinkled down a few different ones to kind of show the concept or the functionality at a default state. But it's totally up to you and how you guys want to configure the system. So each of the 3 filters are composed of 3 different types. So we've got the Butterworth, the Bezel, and the Linquist-Riley. Each have 6 dB per octave configuration. So you can have a shallower slope or a real steep slope. For example, if I bring in a Butterworth now, and then I enable it, you can see that this is going to bring the bottom end, reduce the bottom end slightly. But if I step up the level to 24, you can see that that slope is a lot. Well, it's 24 dB per octave. So at that frequency range, that you'll notice that a lot quicker. That'll kick into full strength. So the next thing I'll do is, what's really cool about this graphing that we've done is if I bring in, I think Ewan wanted to show.
Well, if you bring another,
we'll bring in a parametric EQ. Okay. Now, what's cool about this is you can see that it's interactive. I'll just bring it up a little bit.
You need to bring it across.
There we go. You can actually see the resultant output of the two graphs. So you can see the full picture, like so. And we've also got a phase plot that you can bring in, but that's off by default. All pass is another filter which simply does a phase shift on the channel. So there's no parameters associated with that, but the phase change. Yep. And yep, the concept is that it's an all pass, so it doesn't affect the magnitude, but it changes the phase only, which you can see there.
Okay, and just one thing I'd like to highlight, I'll just bring another EQ in just to also highlight this function, that as you're bringing this in, you can see the blue line is the result of all of the parameters that you've brought in here. So you can see they're individually shaded to show which one of the filters is actually actioning, but the blue line is obviously showing you the result of all of them combined together.
Okay, the next block I'll discuss is the compressor limiter. I'm not going to go into full detail of how a compressor works, but it's very straightforward that you can see that you have your threshold, compression ratio, knee width, makeup gain, attack time, hold time, release time. The graph is interactive, so you can come along and change the threshold just by moving the point on the curve there, and you can change the compression ratio by changing the slope of the curve interactively, which is kind of cool and handy to do to get a visual representation of what you're doing. You can make this a limiter, and you can see that the compression ratio goes to infinity, and then you can set the point, the threshold at which that kicks in and really flattens out the signal.
Sorry, I'm just going to, sorry, I keep jumping in. One other thing I'd just like to show here under the compressor, you can also adjust the knee as well. So if you just see this point here move, that you can modify the knee of that compressor. So again, there's full flexibility all the way from the attack time, etc., to the knee.
Thanks, Ewan. Okay, next block is delay. Very simple. If you don't have the outputs in the same geographical location, if they're offsetted, you can account for this by up to 75 meters, so which is the maximum. So you can see that each channel can be delayed by up to 75 or half that if you wish. 70 to 100 volt mode ships with 70 to 100 on by default. This is because with the high impedance outputs, we have a 70 hertz filter just to reduce the bass going into the high impedance transformer, just to not saturate the transformer. So if you're explicitly using the 4 ohm outputs, you would come along and unclick that to increase the lower frequency range. So that's what that for. So it's on by default. If you're using low impedance, you simply unclick these, which I've done like so.
Green and red.
Yep. You can see here that my mixer setup page is on red, and what this means is that I must have all my inputs muted, so nothing would actually pass through. And you can see that I've got them all in mute. So that's kind of telling me that, hey, nothing is going to come out on that channel. So you can see if I unmute line input 1 and come back, it's green now. So it's all showing me that the mixer's configured correctly. I've got EQ, a crossover and EQ enabled. I've got my compressor in. I don't have any delay, but it's in bypass because it's gray. I'm in 4 ohm mode, and that's going straight to output, amplifier output 1. The next 2 features on this page are the copy setup and preset action. And the best way to kind of show you how these work is to give you a real life example. So say, for example, if we had this ISP amplifier installed in a pub, the installer commissioning the system might come along and say we have the house music in analog input 1. So we might want to name that and make it more identifiable. That's not really a word, but you know what I mean. House music. Okay. So we've got the house music coming in on 1 and amplifier output 2. This is a mono output, might be wired to the main bar. We'll call that main bar. And amplifier output 2 could be wired to the rooftop bar. So we'll call it rooftop. Okay. So logically, we want to put the house music going to the main bar and the rooftop. And that's assuming that that's a mono mixed signal coming in through line input 1. So we're going to go into our mixer setup and we're going to bring in the house music, bring it up to 0, mute all the other channels. I recommend muting the unused channels in this product to give your audio output the best signal to noise performance. So if not using, keep it muted. It's muted by default unless you explicitly unmute it. So I've mixed in the house music to the main bar and I want to do the same for the rooftop. So I'll come in here and of course this product ships with line input 1 going to output 1, line input 2 going to output 2. That's why you see the analog 2 is actually unmuted and passing the signal, but I will bring that down and bring in the house music because I've only got 1 source in this particular setup. The rest of the channels are muted. So that's good. We've got house music going to the main bar and the rooftop. Everyone's happy. I don't want any EQ or crossover for this particular setup. So I'm going to disable it. And you can see I still had these on. Thank you, Ewan. Okay. So they're all in bypass. This is the normal business hours, nothing too fancy. And I want to make all that work that I've done a preset. So I come into preset and I call this normal hours. And we save. And we have saved that and that's it, which you can see. And there's no change. Okay, so now we want to add another preset, and that preset that I'm going to build up is the happy hour preset. So at 5 o'clock in most pubs in Sydney when they're open, 5 o'clock is happy hour. So we want to do some adjustments to create a better atmosphere so people drink more and spend more, I suppose. So first thing I want to do is go back to the mixer setup and in the main bar, we'll bring it up a few dB, rooftop, bring it up a few dB. And then I want to bring in those dynamics that we created earlier. I actually changed my mind. I want to bring in a low shelf because that would make the customers happier to bring in more bass and create the atmosphere. Okay, so I've done that. Okay, now the cool feature here that we've put to save you guys time setting up is, so you don't have to do the crossover and EQ for every channel, if providing we want the same settings going from the main bar to the rooftop. We've implemented this copy setup feature, so you can simply come along and go copy setup, and we want to copy the crossover and EQ from the one that we did to the main bar that we've just done, and we want to bring that down to the rooftop. So crossover and EQ from the main bar to the rooftop, and I simply hit copy, yes, and you can see, voila, I have the same in both. So if you had a really complicated EQ setup, you don't have to recreate the magic for each channel. You can just simply copy them down. Now, the most important part here, now that I've done all that hard work, is to actually save that as a preset. So this one will be happy hour. And we go, yes. So now through the Alma software, whenever the manager or supervisor on duty wants to toggle between the two presets, they can come in and hit recall. And you can see we're back to normal hours where we had the volume at 0. Or we can go to happy hour. And you can see we have the volume cranked up a bit. And you can see that the dynamics have the low shelf, which brings up the bass and creates more of a vibe. Yeah, so that's pretty much that. Now on that preset, you can manually log in and do it through the Alma protocol. There are more sophisticated ways that you can automatically trigger those two presets, which I'll go over later, which are by the close contact closure on the back of the unit, or through the third-party control interface, which I will go over in more detail in a bit later. Okay, so moving on to the control tab. We've got the ability to reset the active configuration. So the active configuration is the configuration whenever you're making changes that aren't in a preset. So I've just brought the house music down on the main bar, and if I went back to control and reset the active configuration, that would reset that back to 0 dB, which is the default. The reset all presets would destroy those presets that I just made. The normal business and happy hour would be gone if I activate that. So the handy features to have. The next setting on the control page is the auto standby. This product, as Ewan explained at the beginning, is ERP compliant. So when it's in standby, it's drawing less than 2 watts, which is great for the environment. When it's out of standby and not much of a signal is passing through, so it's not being driven to the extreme, just with no signal, it's drawing about 30 watts. So it's definitely a good feature to have. And this default setting here basically means that after 30 minutes, if the sensitivity is set to -30, which it is by default, the amplifier will drop into its low power state. And as soon as, instantly within about half a second, as soon as a signal comes in that's greater than -30 dB, it will simply exit standby and resume outputting audio out the power amp. Same independent settings for the expansion sensitivity, which is a Dante card in this setup. And you do have the ability to select which signals are going to wake up the device, and they're all enabled by default. Another cool feature that we put in is the audio failover configuration. And this is great if you, let's say in this example, the house music is coming from a Dante stream on channel, the first Dante channel. And all of us know that from time to time, networks can get unhappy, they can conk out and need a reboot. If this is in an environment that relies on there always being music present, you could set up this audio fail configuration so that the Dante stream is coming in when it's most of the time when it's on, and then you have the backup, which in the pub example, analog input 2 could be Steve's iPod, for example, or whatever house music backup the installer has set up. Then you would set the fail threshold. So something sensible would be, say, -30, and the volume to transition to for Steve's iPod, and we could make that -30. Now, importantly, the failover delay is the time in which the house music has dropped out for before it'll action the changeover to analog input 2. So it might be sensible to bring that up a bit just in case there's some long gaps in the tracks. So we'll make that 30 seconds and we'll enable the failover, and you can see the status is monitoring. So if the house music is playing and it goes below -31 dB for 30 seconds, it will automatically change over to analog input 2. And you'll get the status saying that it's changed over. And you can do the same for the rooftop channel as well. So that's it for the failover.
And sorry, there was just one question that came in regarding the resetting. Just a question, is there a confirmation for this? Yes, there is. When you click, it will come up with the warning here saying what you're about to do and do you definitely want to do it. So there's the answer there. Yes, we do have warnings before the resets are applied.
Okay. Also on the control tab, we've got the GPIOs at the back of the unit, 4 of them that Ewan showed you at the beginning. These are very simple to set up. There's 3 columns. And the first is the feature that you want the GPIO to implement. For this current release, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 features, and we're always adding more. So in future releases, there could be more. If we get feedback or requests for features that we can add, we'll put them in. But for this current 2.1 release, we've got 7 really useful features that I'll go over now. So we've got the VCA, which is a input. So the GPIO is configured as a GPI, and that is basically a rheostat across the GPIO terminal to ground. So think of it like a variable resistor for a wall panel that would go on the wall to change the volume of the power amp.
And sorry, just to jump in here, if I just go to our website. So typically what Jesse's talking about, it would be an RC1 wall panel control. So that has just a very simple variable resistor on the back that could, you can connect that directly to that GPIO pin, and that will give you the remote volume control. So that is the VCA option there, connected to an RC1.
Cool, thank you, Ewan. The next one we've got is the ability to mute an output, but the GPIO is configured as an input. So what that means is that you would basically ground the GPIO 1. So you would put a piece of wire, to think about it very simply, between GPIO 1 and ground, because it's active low, and all outputs would be muted on the power amp. If you didn't want all outputs to be muted, going back to the pub example, we could mute the rooftop by having a closed contact switch between GPIO 1 and ground. When that switch is closed, it would mute the rooftop. The next feature we have, and this is one I really like, is the recall preset, which is also an input, so it's configured as a GPI. So you could have a switch on GPIO 2 to ground, and it's active low. So when the switch is closed, it recalls a preset. So I could have that recalling normal hours, which was just the preset I set up earlier. But then I could have another one on GPIO 3 recalling the happy hour preset. So I could easily toggle between the two, depending on where the switch or the control system had configured that. Also, now moving on to the outputs, if the amplifier has a fault, such as an overload or over temperature, you can set it to be active low, active high. So it's got to pull up to 5 volts. So if it's active low, that means it's always at 5 volts and it goes to 0 volts when the fault is triggered. On the contrary, it could be always at 5 volts, sorry, always at 0 volts and goes to 5 volts when the amplifier is in fault. Pull up disabled is open collector, so you can bring whatever voltage you wish to the application to signal that the amplifier is in fault.
And sorry, just to come in, we had a question come in. Can one GPIO trigger 2 presets? I presume that would be on a low, it would be one preset, on a high, it would be another. Currently, that's something that is not supported. One GPIO can only recall 1 preset. So that's something we could definitely look at adding in. Thanks for that. Yep.
And same with warm and hot. And the last feature is the heartbeat, which is a 1 hertz square wave that goes out the unit, which is handy to have for some control systems. Okay, so that's all from the control tab. Moving on to the network tab. On the top left, we have the host name. You can change that unique host name that you can see at the top of my URL bar at the top. That's product specific, but you can call this Steve Amp if you wish. I'm not going to do it now, but when you update that, it will actually change the URL, and the onus is on you to remember that for future when you bookmark the tab to connect to it again from that point onwards. 2 different network discovery technologies for Windows and OS X. OS X has the .local, which is the multicast DNS technology, and Windows uses the NetBIOS, which doesn't have the .local. So just keep that on mind for which operating system you're on.
If I could just jump in here, Jesse's gone very technical here. The host name is basically just a user-friendly name. So if you don't know the IP address of the product, this is the way that you can just type that name in. That name is, when shipped, the product has a sticker on the front, and you can type that name in. So if you connect to a DHCP network, it's giving it an IP address. You've no idea what that is. You can type that name in and it will automatically discover the device for you. So it's just a mechanism in order to easily connect to the device without requiring the IP address, which sometimes you don't know. And currently in this example, we are operating in DHCP mode. You don't know what the IP address is, but it is the easiest way for a non-technical user to connect to the product. Sorry, I don't know if Jesse said there, obviously you have the flexibility to move to the fixed IP addresses as well.
And then the next feature we offer for network control is the third-party control, which uses raw TCP or UDP sockets to send the Alma protocol, which are text strings, to the amplifier to basically do any of the control that I've showed you in this Alma software. You can do by the Alma protocol. I'm going to show you that in a bit more detail, or Ewan's going to show you that in a bit more detail after this. But to access the third-party control, you could actually write your own software to connect to it, or you could use a third-party TCP client, and all you need to simply do is connect on this IP address. Now, there's no network discovery for the third-party control solution, which is pretty industry standard. You need to know the IP address. So we've gone that step further and showing you the current IP address of the amplifier, and the one I've got in front of me happens to be this one down the bottom here. So if I went into my third-party TCP sender application, I'd use that IP address and I'd use the port number 2626 if I haven't changed it to anything else above. And then I would simply be able to send strings such as set mute output 1 true, and you would see the output 1 would then mute. So very simple TCP, UDP. You get full functionality by using this.
And sorry if I could jump in here, that one of the very common questions or requests that we've had is for a product like this when you inevitably lose the IP address and you don't know what it is. So this would be more if you've set it to a static IP address or someone else has set it to a static IP address and that information has been lost. On the back of the product, there is the reset button. So if I just quickly go back to our presentation here. So on the back of the product, this reset button here is slightly recessed on the product. So you would just put a pencil or a pen into that reset. If you hold the reset button for 5 seconds, it will reset the IP address of the product. So that would reset it back to the default of DHCP mode. So that allows you to then gain access back into the unit without having to do any other form of reset. If you hold the reset button down for 10 seconds, it will then remove all of the account information. So Jesse's about to go into account information, but that allows you to, if you forget the admin login, for example, if that is changed to another password that is then lost, you can hold the button down and it will reset it back. So that allows you to get account access back into the product as well. And then after 15 seconds of holding down the reset, it will actually factory default the unit back to the default settings. So that can, and we anticipate being very useful for installers in the future when they're coming back to product that has been, that information has been lost, but you can still access it without losing all of the configuration information in the product.
Cool. And then to finish off the network settings, we've got the IP address automatically, which is DHCP mode. So unit ships with an IP address of 0000. That tells any DHCP client router that an IP address needs to be allocated for this device. And when it joins a network, it gets allocated IP address, and then you use use a network discovery URL that's on the product sticker at the front. You type it into the bar, and then from then on you connect to it, like Ewan has explained earlier. And you can also use a static IP address as well. Okay, the next tab is the software, and this is a really cool feature that we've put in for the installers. So say, for example, if you were commissioning an ISP amplifier in a multiplex cinema and you had to install 8 of them, and you went to the trouble of setting it up for 1, so you got all the dynamics correct, all the signal paths mapped out, and you did all that hard work, what you would do is you can export from the amplifier that you've just set up. You can export a text file out of all the settings. You would save that to your desktop, and then for the next, yep, let's do it now. Okay, yes. Okay, so you can see that.
And sorry, just to jump in here, I will go through this in detail later, but this is basically all of the settings within the product that they can be saved, modified, and sent to another product later. But I'll go into this in a bit more detail later.
And on the second or X number of amplifiers that were being configured to be the same, you would simply load in that config file in the new amplifier that I just exported. And then if there's any additional tweaks that are unit specific at that point, you could just manually do, and you probably saved yourself half an hour, or depending how complicated the setup is. Factory default, we all know what that does. Brings it back to the default factory state. Latest firmware for the ISP is just a link to our website. If you do want to update the firmware, if we put a new version out with, say, new features like I was telling you about with the GPIO, you would simply download the package from our website, and it's a .binary file. So once you have that file, you would click here, and this is one I downloaded earlier, which is here. And the cool thing is when I hit open, you get a snapshot of what your current software is and what the new version is. And you can see I'm up to date here, so I'm not going to bother doing the update. But if it was out of date, you would simply hit yes, and it would update. And finally, we have the accounts. There's two styles of accounts. There's active and admin. Admins have the same access to all the tabs that we have here. If I make a standard standard user, they would only get access to the home tab, which is handy if you're in an environment where you don't want to give everyone full access to all the settings. So that's handy to have, and that's pretty much it. I'm going to hand you guys back to Ewan now to talk more about the Dante.
Great, thank you. One thing I'd just like to say on the account section at the moment, so this user is configured as an administrator and they are active. If you set a new user, and we'll call them user, password user, if I make them active, but I don't make them an administrator, that then comes in, so let's remove Chrome pop-up. So we just have a standard user. If I log out of this product and then come back in through user, what you'll then see is they only get access to the home screen. So they can change the volume, they can change the mix setup, but they don't have any access into any of the advanced features that administrator has. So that's the two accounts that are possible in this product. So just log back in as the admin. Okay. Peter has a couple of questions that have been asked.
One question, do you maintain all your settings when you do a software update?
Yes, we do. So that was, sorry, just in case you didn't hear there, do you maintain all of the settings when you do a firmware update? Yes, we do. So whenever you do that firmware update, things will be retained. There was another question. I'm not sure we can answer this right now. It's going maybe a bit technical, but it was, do you support link local? Do you know that off the top of your head?
No, we don't. It's the rollback IP address is 192.168.1.10. So if you want to do a direct connection with your laptop, you would set your laptop to 192.168.1.1, and the IAMP is on a default of 192.168.1.10. So you'd be on the same subnet and you would access it that way with a direct link.
Yep. Okay, so it'd be direct link and not through link. Thank you. Okay, so what I'm going to show now, and I'll try and keep this brief, we're obviously starting to get towards the end of our time now, but the Dante setup. So this is the setup that we have for the Dante, that we have a 4250 and a 2250, and they both have a Dante module connected. So this is sitting in front of me on the desk, and the laptop is connected to the router so that I can control both of these. Sorry, the duplicate slide there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transmit out of the 2250 the audio and put it into the 4250. So this is basically any Dante transmission system. So this could be a console mixer, a front-end DSP, for example. So I am just using two ISPs in this example because it's easy to show you the concept. But basically, any Dante source is then being configured to send the Dante audio stream to the IS4250. So that's the setup that we're about to walk through now. So I'm going to send audio from the 2250 to the 4250. So if I then go back into the control software, so I'm currently in the 2250, and actually, I'll start with the Dante software to begin with. Sorry, I've just jumped too quickly here. So an additional software that is required is the Dante control. Very briefly for people, the Dante of software from Audinate, the people that are behind Dante, it allows you to configure which Dante input is connected to which Dante output. So this software is very, very simple to use, and it is shown here. So in terms of our demonstration that we have, I'll just expand these out so that you can see them. So we have the receiver. So I want the IS4250 to receive the audio. This has actually already been selected, so I'll deselect this. But I want the IS4250, it's Dante input 1, I want to be the receiver. And then if we follow this up here to the IS2250, that it's line in here. So if I select here, oh, apologies, I've said that the wrong way around, sorry. So, no, that was right. So what I'm doing here is out of the Dante transmitter, so that Dante coming from the 2250 is going to be received into the 4250. Now this is exclusively in the Dante domain. This is a separate bit of software that we don't have access to. This is something that's been independently written by Audinate. So we've now configured these two channels to be connected together. We then go into our software, and this is the 2250. So just to show you how this would work, if I go into the mixer setup, and I'm going to send out pink noise out of this product, and oh, sorry, I did the incorrect one here. Apologies. So I'm taking the 2250, and this Dante output is where I'm sending the audio out. So I'm going to use the pink noise generator in order to do that. And it sends audio out of the Dante. I then go to the 4250, just connect to it. Is that about you? Okay. So I'm now connecting to the 4250. Okay. And one thing that Jesse just whispered in my ear that I've forgotten, that currently the IS2250 was in standby. So that's where you're seeing the standby status here. If I bring it out of standby, you're then seeing the audio being sent out, the pink noise is being sent out. That's actually why I didn't see audio coming out of the pink noise before, because it was in standby. So good catch by Jesse there. So on the 4250, I am then going to take the Dante input, come into the mixer, and then here you can see that the Dante is being received. I can then bring that up, bring it out of mute, and I'll mute the other channel because I only want to use the Dante channel. And then that is going to come out of that audio output. So if I go in here, there's where you see the signal. So hopefully that's clear. Sorry, we're jumping around quite a few screens there. So I'll just go back to the PowerPoint. Hopefully that makes it a bit clearer that we configured from the 2250, we configured the Dante to connect to each other. And then I sent audio from the pink noise generator of the 2250 out and then back into the 4250. So that is how you would configure the Dante network and the Dante controller. I'm doing that very, very briefly because most of the time people would do training on the Dante in order to get that system working. So finally, I am going to briefly speak about the Alma third-party protocol. This is a little bit tricky in terms of our audience. I need to keep this relatively brief because we could go into too much detail here. Ultimately, the two files that I want to discuss today are the protocol usage and examples and the actual specification itself. Both of these files are on the website, so I'll just jump to our website now. So if I go to one of the products on our website, what you'll see is under the download section, the protocol usage example and the specification. So I'll just open up those documents. Sorry, I need to go to the desktop. Seen that? Yep. So with the protocol usage, again, I'll deliberately limit this for the moment just because it's too detailed, frankly, for this level of discussion. But it's all text-based commands. So this is a typical example of how you would set the volume. You're sending it to the IP address and port number that Jesse described before in the configuration pages. And you would send a simple text command that would go set active output 1 volume to -40 and end it with a carriage return. So that, as the description says here, is setting the output 1 to volume of -40. So it's a very, very simple protocol that we've implemented here, human readable, and you shouldn't have a lot of problems implementing it. There are a lot more examples shown in the second page, and just to briefly discuss some of them, the set command, as it describes, is the changing of a parameter. You're setting a parameter, and you get an automatic reply from the product on that successful command being sent. So in this example, it's actually echoing back. If you said sent, set, preset, etc., it would reply with the command that you sent, and that's an acknowledgement that it worked. If it didn't work, it would send back a reply error command. In terms of the set command, there's also a get command, and that would be the reading of status. And in this section here, there is the difference between the active configuration, which is the configuration that the amplifier is set in now. So it's live configuration. If you then set a preset, you're actually not changing the active configuration, but you're changing one of the presets. So it has a concept, you can go from preset 1 to 10 here. So a whole series of examples here in terms of how you actually send commands to the product. If I then show the protocol, and again, I'm really going to deliberately limit this because it's too dry, the information to consume at the moment. But it's basically an Excel sheet in terms of how you would go through making up a command. So it is relatively simple. That first of all, is it a set command? Yes, it is. I want to set, and then you come down the next column. I want to set the active configuration. So I'm just going to come down here, and here is the active. So it would be set active. And then I want to change input 1, for example. So you'd be saying set active in 1. And then what do you want to change in 1? I want to change the volume. And then the next command there would be your setting in terms of dB. So that would be set active in 1 vol -10. The volume is a good example that we also support things like vol up and vol down. And you can set within the software what that actually means. Do you go up by 3 dB? Do you go up by 1 dB, etc.? So you can make that work with simple control-based solutions that you can go up, 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 down, down, down. So the protocol is very, very detailed. For most people, you will not require all of the detail of this protocol. However, I'm showing you it because it shows the flexibility and power that you have access to literally every setting within the product. So that is the Alma protocol. Thank you. So that concludes the ISP presentation. A couple of things that I'd like to round off is what is available on our website. Specifically, it would be around the ISP to begin with. So on the ISP, each of the product pages, actually, sorry, I didn't show one thing, I'm just realizing, sorry. On the ISP, under the videos section, there is a video here, and I'll very quickly play it. It's only 45 seconds. This shows how you connect the expansion modules to the ISP.
G'day guys, I'm Xavier from Australian Monitor. Today we'll be showing you how to connect your DM 4x4 Dante module into your Australian Monitor ISP series amp. Firstly, ensure the amplifier is turned off and then remove the expansion board cover located in the rear of the amp. Once the cover is removed, you will notice a cable restraint connected to the ribbon cable. This can be removed and discarded. We now take our DM 4x4 module and connect the ribbon cable, noticing the key on the connector for proper orientation. Once connected, fit the card back in the slot and replace the 2 screws. As always, thanks for watching, good luck on your install, and we'll catch you on the next one.
So that's how you would install one of the expansion modules. One of the most useful things that you'll find when looking at the ISP later is that we have a live demonstration of the software that is available online, so you don't need a product in order to see the software after this presentation. So if I click that link, it will show the demonstration software here. Simply sign in. The only thing that will be different is we have deliberately put in some randomized audio data so that you can see the metering working. So when you're muting or changing the volume, it doesn't directly reflect what is coming in and out. But all of the settings in here, your ability to change crossovers, EQ mixes, and basically just get around the system and how it works is available through that demonstration software. So I would really encourage you later, obviously don't expect you to remember quite a lot of this later, so please do use that demonstration example online and you can get around the software. On the website, we would also just like to highlight some of the new things that we've added recently in terms of resources. That we have ceiling speaker calculators, SPL calculators, and that Alma control software. And also we've very recently added in some extended application examples. So we've put that into a number of different sections. If I just go into one of the retail sections, so it has a breakdown of a whole number of different examples and different products for those examples. So just showing the small shop example here gives a detailed breakdown of how we've given the suggested configuration of the system. There's a breakdown of the equipment list for that you can add that and build bills of materials on the website, download those bills of material and give those to account managers that can assist you. There is also a PDF that you can download that then shows that you can potentially give that to some customers just to give ideas on what you're proposing for the application. Okay, so that was briefly what we have been implementing on the website recently and the ISP. So I'd like to say thank you very much on behalf of Jesse and myself for joining. I know everyone's time is valuable, so thank you again, and I hope this has been useful to you. I'll hand you back to Peter.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We had over 60 participants logging in, which is a fantastic result, and particularly thanks to Ewan and Jesse for their time and going through all that with us. As you will all no doubt know, Australian Monitor is owned by Amber. So if you have any further questions, comments or suggestions, please get them to us via your account manager. The Australian Monitor development and engineering teams work out of our offices here in Warriewood, so access to the brains trust behind not only the ISP series, but all of the Australian Monitor range is dead easy. All of the ISP amplifiers we went through today are currently in stock, so Please feel free to place your orders. Operators are standing by for your calls. We tried to make this as easy as possible to follow, but if you have any feedback, please let us know. We plan on doing more of these sessions next year as more new and exciting products come to market. This has been recorded and we'll make the recording available to you shortly, as well as a presentation on the Alma software. Thanks once again, and we'll see you all next time.